everyone, this is Mindy Eggen for Scrapbook and Cards Today magazine, and in today's video I'm going to show you how you can use your die as a stencil. I'm going to be using the Piece Within set from Tailored Expressions, and the one that I'm going to use today has these cattails, I think is what they're called. So I'm going to take this die, which has a frame around it, which is going to help hold it in place for me, and I am going to die cut it from some white cardstock. Now that I have that die cut out and I removed all of the negative pieces, I'm going to bring in a piece of layering weight white cardstock from Gina K Designs. Some of these areas are not attached to anything, they're kind of sticking out, and I want to make sure that they are held in place while I do my ink blending. So I'm actually going to be taking some repositionable tape and I'm going to place it behind some of those delicate areas. And this will be really easy to remove once I'm done. So just in some of those fine areas. Next, I'll bring my die cut piece over to my white cardstock and I'm going to just place that down. Rub my hand over those areas that I put that repositionable tape. Kind of get rid of any excess tape that might have been hanging off at the edge. And then I'm going to bring in some Post-it tape and I'm going to secure this down to my cardstock using that Post-it tape. When I'm applying this around the border, I want to make sure I'm not going too far in because I really want to get the inside of that frame. Now, if you still have a little bit of adhesive showing, you can always take either your finger to rub it off, or if you have an adhesive eraser, would help remove some of that excess adhesive. Because anything that's left behind is going to show up when we start ink blending. Now, the colors that I'm going to be using to do my ink blended background is Saltwater Taffy, Pink Champagne, and raspberry Sorbet from Tailored Expressions. I'm also going to be using my blending brushes from Tailored Expressions as well. So I'm going to start with my light blue ink, which is going to go down towards the bottom. So I will just pick up that ink with my blending brush. I'm going to start kind of on this Post-it tape and work my way up. So I really want to make sure I'm working into those fine areas that the die cut provided. I'm going to kind of go in both directions, so left to right and right to left, just to really make sure I'm filling in that space. You do still want to be careful when you get up to these delicate areas that aren't attached to anything else, so you don't want to push too hard with your blending brush. And I'm going to go about a third of the way up. It's not going to look like much now, but once we remove the handmade stencil, you'll really be able to see the blending. Once I have the blue down, I'm going to bring in Pink Champagne. And this one's going to get applied right in the center. So again, be careful of your delicate die cuts. Kind of overlapping with my blue a little bit. So this piece doesn't want to stay down very well, so I'm going to try and hold it with my finger as best as I can. You might get a little bit of a hue around it, but that should smooth out. Now that we have the Pink Champagne, we can come in with our darkest color, which is the Raspberry Sorbet. So that one I'm going to go towards the top and blend down into that Pink Champagne. Again, light-handed because we don't want to risk moving our die cuts. It's only a repositionable tape, so it's not a super strong hold. It's just enough to kind of tack everything down for us. And I'm going to try and be really careful around this one that keeps moving. I probably should have put a little bit more repositionable tape there. Or kind of brush in the direction that it's going. Now I'm going to call that good for my ink blending, and I'm going to remove this Post-it tape that was going around the edges. And this is a really fun technique because you can almost get a 2-for-1 out of this. Once you're done with your die cut using it as a mask, then you could also use that die cut on the front of your card. Now keep in mind, we did attach this down with some repositionable tape, so I'm just going to be very gentle as I pull this up. Kind of coming in from all sides and slowly peel that up. So you can see we do still have some adhesive there from that repositionable tape. So you can either take your finger and rub it away, or you can bring in an adhesive eraser. Repositionable tape is really nice because it is not going to harm your cardstock. So I removed all of that excess tape, and now I have this beautifully stenciled background. You could use this as a 1-layer card. It would be perfect for that just by stamping a sentiment. And as I mentioned earlier, now we have a 2-for-1. So not only do I have this beautifully stenciled background using a die cut, but I also have my die cut here that is ink blended. So I could essentially use both of these. Now I do want to actually cut out this stenciled area to add to a card front. And Tailored Expressions also came out with this die. It's called Layer It Piece Within. So this has some additional elements that you could use with this Piece Within die set. So this is the original die set. It's got the 3 dies in here with that frame. So you can use this on its own, or you can pair it with this Layer It Piece Within. Now there happens to be a die in here that's going to fit perfectly around this frame. You could also just use your paper trimmer and trim it out, or if you have your own rectangle die set in your collection, check through those rectangle dies and see if you find one that fits. Even if it gives you just a little bit more of a border, that would work too. So I'm going to line this die up and try and make sure my white margin is even. Then I'm going to hold that down with some Post-it tape, and I'm going to run this through my die cut machine to trim it out. So now as I pop that out, I have this perfectly die cut out frame of my silhouette area that I did creating my own stencil. I'm going to save this piece because I'll be able to use it to stamp my sentiment. For the front of my card, I want to add a matte layer behind this, so I'm going to take a piece of raspberry sorbet cardstock, and I am going to have this be just a little bit bigger than what my actual die cut is. I want to pop this up to add a little dimension to that matted area, but before I do that, I trimmed out another piece of cardstock that just is a little bit smaller than this actual die cut piece. Doesn't have to be perfect. All it's really going to do is add stability to my piece. And then when I add my foam strips, we're not going to see those foam strips through the cardstock. So I added a little tape runner here, added that to the back of my die cut panel. I'm a little off, so I will just take my scissors and trim that down a little bit. And then I'm going to eyeball this. So I want to place this down here in that bottom corner and then trim this out myself. So I'm going to take my panel, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to add some foam strips behind this. So with this foam roll that I have, I just need to add 2. That'll go behind my panel. Then I can remove the backing. And I'm going to position this down here in the bottom corner. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a border all the way around. And then I'll bring in my paper trimmer and trim this down. If you have an additional rectangle die that can cut one out a little bit bigger than your ink blended panel, that would be great. But I am just going to eyeball this. So I am happy with that. Now for the rest of my panel, I am going to take a piece of this Rosewater cardstock. I think it's called a Rosewater cardstock from Tailored Expressions. It's a really nice pale pink. And I'm going to run this through using my Swiss Dots embossing folder from Gina K Designs. So this cardstock is measuring 4¼ by 5½. I'm going to place that inside of my folder, close that down. And I'm going to be using my Intracut die cut machine from Gina K Designs. I'm turning it to the side and I'm going to turn it to the setting that says 2D emboss. Then I can open up the doors of my machine, bring in my cutting plate, my embossing folder, and then my platform. And just run this through. So now when I open this up, I have this beautiful Swiss dot design on the front of my panel. Now, if you want to enhance these dots just a little bit more, you can take a white pigment ink pad and just kind of tilt it lightly and drag that over those embossed areas. And that's going to make those dots just pop a little bit more. Kind of helps separate them from that background just a little bit. Now I have a piece of white cardstock that is 5½ by 8½, and I'm going to score it at 4¼ to create a side folding card base. Reinforce that fold with my bone folder. And the way I like to attach my panels that have been used with an embossing folder is I like to use double-sided adhesive sheets. So this is one from Altenew that I trimmed down to 4¼ by 5½. Peel the backing off of one side, flip my embossed panel over, and place this down. I'm going to smooth my hand over that, really press down to secure that onto that back of the panel. Sometimes with these embossed designs, it's hard to get it secured really good to the front of your cardstock. So I find that these double-sided adhesive sheets work really well. Then I'm going to take a piece of that Post-it tape I used earlier, and I folded it in half and rolled it up, and I'm going to place that inside of my card base just to hold that shut. Now I can take my panel and I'm going to remove the other backing piece of this double-sided adhesive. And I can place this over the front of my card base. So my card base is done. I have my stenciled piece. Now I just need a sentiment. I think a great sentiment to use with this is going to be the with sympathy, because unfortunately we need sympathy cards, and I think this is just a really great design to use for a sympathy card. But this Sincere Sentiments set from Tailored Expressions has a lot of really great sentiments on here. Remembering you today, so very sorry, thinking of you. So I'm going to go with this with sympathy. So I'm going to bring out my Teal Misty. This is the original size. And because this is a red rubber stamp, I need to remove the foam insert. Then I'm going to bring in one of those scratch pieces of cardstock that we die cut from. I'm going to just hold that down with my magnet, and I'm going to grab the With Sympathy sentiment. So I'm going to try and fit this into an open space. Then I can pick it up with the Door of the Misty. And I'm going to ink it up in the Oreo ink. So close the door, stamp that down gently. There are some delicate areas in this, so I just want to be careful. I'm going to stamp that one more time. And I'm okay that this is crooked because there is a coordinating die set to this set that I'm going to use to die cut out my sentiment. And I think I'll go one more time. There. And so now I have my sentiment. I just need to find the coordinating die for it. So again, I will line this up and hold that down with some Post-it tape or any type of low tack tape. And then I can run this through my die cut machine. I also die cut out another one out of white cardstock just so I can layer these together, add a little bit of stability again to my sentiment. And I am using my Gina K Designs Connect glue that I have in a fine tip bottle. So using my tweezers, I'm just going to help align that. I can pick it up, and that liquid glue gives me a little bit of wiggle room. So now we are ready for our card assembly. So I brought back in my card base with the embossed panel. I have my blended background and my sentiment. So for this one, I still want to add a little bit of lift to this panel that's already got some foam squares on it or some foam tape. So I'm going to go with a thinner foam tape for this. So again, I'm just going to take these strips and place them on the back of my ink blended panel. So 2 of them fit perfectly there. Then I can remove the backing of that foam tape. I'm going to grab my tweezers and I'm going to place this down in the bottom left-hand corner. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a margin around the edge. Kind of adjust that if I need to, and then I can secure that down. Then I have my sentiment that I'm going to have kind of hanging off of the edge there. So I am going to build up my foam tape a little bit on just this right-hand side so that it is nice and flush with the front of the card. So to do that, I am going to be bringing in my mini foam squares from Gina K Designs. Make sure I am on that side of the sentiment like I want to be. And I may need to double that up to really get that height. So I think 2 of them there are pretty good. I think if I add a third one, it might be too much. So there's a little bit of a dip, but not too bad. So then I'll remove the backing here, and I'm going to add some liquid glue to the other side. Grab my tweezers, and I'm going to place that over here. So it's going to overlap my design. Now I'm going to grab some of my favorite embellishments, which is the clear quartz sequins from Gina K Designs. I'm just going to put these in a small dish here and grab my pick and stick tool, which is double-ended. It's got the pokey side on one and the wax tip on the other. So I like to come in and start out by placing them about where I would want them to go. And then once I finalize that decision, then I can add some glue to them. And now I can come in and add little dots of glue. Just pick this up with the wax end of my pick and stick tool and then place it back down over those areas of glue. These down here with the embossed panel, I have to kind of place them in between those Swiss dots. And then that is going to finish off my card project. So that is how we can take a die and turn it into a stencil, but you're really getting 2 for 1 out of it because you can also use that die to create another card. I hope you enjoyed today's card project and inspiration, and you will give this technique a try. Thank you so much for joining me today.